Welcome, everybody. My name is Wendy Burton. I am the founder and chair of EcoTree. And I just want to thank you all today for coming out here and joining us. We are living right now, as you all know, in turbulent times. And some people, are not sure what should we do now? What does our dollar look like out there? What are we going to do for our future? So I just really appreciate everybody coming in here today just to look and see for themselves how we can have a shift in our thinking of what we can do. So thank you so much again for joining us. And who we have here, I'm just going to introduce the panel. And then there's going to be, just below the panel is going to be a Q&A, so you'll be able to go in there and ask a few questions. And after the presentation, then we'll be able to answer all of those questions for you. And the awesome person who's going to be managing the Q&A for you is Rita Fromhold. She is our SDG Projects and Operations Extraordinaire person. And so Rita will be managing that all for you. And then after that, we have Angela Nada, who is our Chief Investment Officer. Some of you people that I noticed that were coming on the call, you are already investors in EcoTree, and you've been investing every year. So I'll make you bet dimes to donuts. You have talked to this woman. And if you haven't talked to her and you're thinking about you'd like to, go for it. The next one we have is Dr. Kathy Key. She's our President and Chief Operations Officer. She's the one who's going to be bringing to you today this PowerPoint presentation. So we've only got a limited amount of time, and I don't want you to miss any of this presentation. So I am going to pass the baton over to Dr. Kathy to take it away.
Thank you, Wendy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Friday afternoon. And there's nothing I enjoy more in the world than sharing EcoTree and what we're doing. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. And for those of you, it's the first time we've met. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. I do have an accent. I'm English. And in spite of the fact that I've lived in North America for nearly 20 years, I've not managed to shake my English accent. I have a PhD, and my PhD is in anthropology, but it was kind of interesting. I got my PhD before coming to Canada, studied at University College London, and my PhD was on the evolution and development of cooperation. And one of my mentors was an economist at the University of London. And inside of that work, my fascination was with how can we create a world and conditions where we're actually working together to create a bigger pie rather than competing for our own slice of the pie. And hopefully you'll hear some of that thinking of working together and creating a better world inside of this presentation. I'd like to cover what I'm not and what we're not is, I'm not an investment advisor. So nothing you're going to hear in this presentation is advice from a financial advisor. And I'm also not a fortune teller. So believe it or not, I can't predict the future. I don't know what's coming. And I think we're all feeling a little bit like that right now. If we'd got together on a call a few months ago, I don't think any of us would have predicted what's been happening with COVID-19 and physical isolation and the things that we're dealing with now. And these really are difficult times. Many of us have people that we love or are connected to that are sick. Or have family members that are sick. People are losing their jobs. People are watching their portfolios go up and down with the stock market. And there's a general sense of, I mean, I'm just talking personally, unease and unrest about You know, what does the future hold for us? And, you know, I think one of the things we can say about COVID-19 is it's brought home something that, you know, might have been obvious to us as an intellectual concept, but as a reality, as lived, life is a risky business. Every day, the things we do, the choices we make, the things that happen, life is by its very nature risky. And this has been really brought home to us in a very, very clear way right now. And so one of the things that I've been contemplating, and we've been contemplating at World Trees, is there such a thing as a good risk? Given that life is already risky and uncertain, are there some risks that are worth taking more than others? And that's going to be a theme of this presentation, and for something for each of you to contemplate as you're listening and watching this presentation. In the world of investment, we're used to talking about risk. And most people, you know, unless you put your cash under a mattress, which in itself has its own risks, people are investing their money. And when they invest their money, they're weighing up the risks. And there's sort of a theory that this is a very measured and thoughtful process, and it certainly can be. And there's also a sort of feeling that this shouldn't be an emotional process. And then this happens. And the stock markets start wheeling up and down, and we're watching it, and we're watching this going on. The value of a portfolio changing on a day-to-day basis, seemingly with like almost no rationale to it. And unless you're a Vulcan, like you've really mastered your emotional self-control, if you're watching your assets go down, the feeling is going to be something like this. So yeah, we can be a little panic-stricken by what's going on. And so one of the questions that we can ask ourselves is this: what if we stopped chasing short-term profit? And here at World Tree, we've always been in it for the long game. So there's no changes here at World Tree in terms of this new environment, in the sense that we're in the tree business. And in the tree business, you have to be in it for the long game, because trees take a long time to grow. And, you know, there's a billionaire timber investor who we've been quoting for years now. And he likes to say that as long as the sun shines and the rain rains, trees just keep on growing. Trees, when you think about it, really don't have any concern for human matters like the stock market. Timber has been an interesting investment class. It's typically been increased in value at a rate 3% higher than inflation, and that's for the last 90 years, and has outperformed the stock market for the last 100 years. And we've consistently seen an increasing demand for timber that's in step not just with the increasing human population, but our increasing demand for products in our homes and building our homes and creating the world we're in based on wood. And in fact, the United Nations is telling us that demand for wood is going to double by 2050. And meanwhile, we're seeing statistically a trend towards timber shortages. So we're literally not keeping up with demand. And so this is, if you've ever been on a presentation with me before, you may have seen this graph. This shows timber, which is the green line on the graph, and it's the growth of an index of timber investments compared to other asset classes that we're familiar with, like emerging markets, global stocks, real estate. And you can see from this graph, not only does the green line outperformed the other lines consistently over time. But in 2008, which we all know was the year of the last major stock market crash, not only does the green line not dip like as much as the other lines, it doesn't seem to hardly dip at all. So why is this? Well, most timber investments tend to be what we call private equity. And so private equity is equity that's not publicly listed or traded. For those of you who are familiar with WeFunder, you might have found out about us through WeFunder. Most of the offerings you see on WeFunder, this is private equity. But typically private equity has been available, these types of investments have only been available to large institutional investors and accredited investors. So at WorldTree, for many years now, we've been out to shake that up. We're like, why should it be that only accredited investors, so people who already have a high net worth, how come only they can invest in these private offerings? What if we created our program and what we're doing is something as a private offering that anyone could participate in? And we created what we call the WorldTree EcoTree Program. Now, many of you on this call I know will be familiar with this, but for some of you, this is brand new. So this is like, in a nutshell, presentation of how the EcoTree program works. And it's all based on this beautiful tree called the Emperor Splendor tree. Biological name is Paulownia. And in the middle here, you see Wendy with a 6-month-old tree from Tennessee. And our basic business model is we take this little $3 plant, and over the course of 10 years, which is how long it takes to grow the trees, we turn it into $800 of lumber. That's basically our objective here at WorldTree. Meanwhile, those beautiful, gigantic leaves are absorbing massive amounts of carbon to fuel that fast growth rate. Now you can look this tree up. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's officially amazing. It's the fastest growing tree in the world. It's also been featured in Farmer's Almanac and Bloomberg Business. And it produces a beautiful, lightweight hardwood with a very high strength to weight ratio. And in spite of these amazing properties, this is a non-GMO tree and it's a non-invasive tree. So this is our business model. And this is where we link back to that idea of cooperation. We've joined WorldTree, our team of experts, with farmers around the world and investors. And the way that it works is, we provide the trees, the training, our decades of expertise with this tree. And we provide those trees to our farmers, who they provide the land and the maintenance and the TLC to grow the trees. And this whole thing is fueled by our investors. And every $3,000 that we receive as an investment actually funds the planting of 1 acre of trees. So this is kind of the beginning of the journey. This is Juan Luis. He's one of our Costa Rican team. And this picture is very recent. He's here in one of our 3 Costa Rica locations where the trees start their lives. And we grow these trees up ready for the farmers. This is actually it's propagating from these beautiful trees here. The trees go out to our farmers. These are some of our farmers in Alabama, and this is their first year of planting. The trees behind them are about 3 months old. And the farmers grow the trees. This picture was taken almost exactly, just shy of 1 year ago. And this is Eugene with some 2-year-old trees. As you can see, they're already really big and beautiful. And then this next picture was taken about 3 months later on the same farm in the same field. And you can see the growth rate over just a short amount of time. And the objective is to grow them into these great, big, gorgeous trees like the one that you can see Wendy hugging here. And maybe later, if you ask Wendy, will tell you the very, very special person to whom this tree belongs.
Yeah, it's a special tree.
Now, when the trees are mature, we harvest them for their lumber. So the whole goal here is to produce a sustainable source of timber. And what makes it particularly sustainable is that when you cut this tree down, it actually regenerates right from the stump. So we can have a sustainable source of timber without having to replant. Now, the wood that's produced is absolutely beautiful. It's blonde, it's straight grained. They call it, and I'm going to try and say this right because I am English, the aluminum of lumber. Did I say that right, Wendy?
Yeah, I love the way you say it your way, though, too.
Aluminium of lumber is how I would say it. It's the aluminum of lumber. It has a very high strength to weight ratio. It's almost as light as balsa, yet it's similar in strength to a pine, very water resistant and rot resistant. And so these beautiful properties of the tree allow it to be used for many things, from musical instruments, surfboards, paddleboards, sailboats, but also for furniture, finishes, veneers, window blinds. Many of the wooden window blinds you see in the world are actually made of empress wood. And then on the right-hand side, this is a home finished in empress that actually won Green Building Awards because the wood also has a very high insulating property. So it's great for use to finish in green buildings. Now, the wood on the market, it sells currently in the current market for between $3 and $14 a board foot. Board foot is the typical way, a unit of measurement for lumber. 1 acre of trees produces approximately 30,000 board feet of lumber. So if we do some multiplication here, what that means is that 1 acre of trees can produce $90,000 or more of lumber. Now, of course, again, can't see the future, so we don't really know what the market is going to be down the road, but whatever profits we do make, we share out. And the way we share them is 25% to World Tree, 50% to our farmers, because they're doing most of the work here, and 25% to our investors. So in a hypothetical, just so that you can see it, if we were to make $90,000 from an acre, this is how we would share out those profits between the three groups. Now, I want to go back to this theme of risk because we're still managing risk. We, in this case, have a natural product. It's a tree. And so one of the main risks is from Mother Nature. What if there's storms or if something happens one of our farms? So one of the things we've done at World Tree to manage risk is we've diversified. And one of the key areas we've diversified is in our farms. So we actually plant currently in 5 different countries: Canada, United States, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Mexico. Here you see a map of our target areas for planting in the United States. And here, this is a brand new graph from this week. This actually shows our new locations of planting in the United States. So you can see those red dots in various parts of the US, also in Costa Rica. Now, the whole idea here is that we don't want to risk our trees on just one farm. So we diversify, we plant in many locations. And so we spread out the risks, and then our investors get to benefit by actually sharing the profits from the many farms in different places. Costa Rica is one of those areas where we've been planting now for a couple of years. In Costa Rica, we typically intercrop with coffee plants. And this is Mariana, another member of our Costa Rican team, with one of our farmers there. This is Wendy with Mariana, holding on to a tree that's only just 12 months old when this picture was taken. Last year, in October, we did our first plantings in Guatemala. So the trees got planted in October, and Doug, our CEO on the right, and Elliot and some of our team went and visited in Guatemala to see how the trees are doing. And as you can see, they're doing amazing. So that's Doug there on the right holding the leaf of one of the trees. But then the one that's really telling is the picture on the left here. So that's Elliot, who leads our farmer success team, with a tree that isn't even 6 months old. Now, you're going to have to ask yourself here, is Elliot a very, very, very small man, or is that a gigantic tree? And I'll leave you to figure that one out for yourselves. Also, last fall, we started conversations in Mexico, and we've had just this huge response from Mexico. And so we're very excited this season to be planting trees in Mexico as well.
I think I need to go for a visit.
One day we'll be able to go for a yes. So, you know, there's different kinds of risks, and if you read our offering documents, it actually lists many of the different risks with the program. And it also talks about yields and returns. So this graph here shows the potential return on a $3,000 investment based on a very critical factor, which is tree survival. Now, we're targeting 75% tree survival. That's our target. And yeah, this graph shows you different potential returns from a terrible result of like 10% tree survival, where we'd still give a possible return of $4,750, up to all the different best case scenarios. And so that's what's possible. And again, I want to emphasize no crystal ball here. Every investment, including this one, includes risk and uncertainty. But if you're intrigued at this point, you can go to the WeFunder site, which I'll give you the address for, and look at the offering documents, which go into those in more detail. So I want to talk a little about what we've accomplished. So we've been every year, our first year was 2015, which is a Canadian offering. But then we started to move into the US, and last year we did our first larger US offering. And then we launched this year's offering. So our goal this year has been to raise enough funds to plant 3,000 acres. And so we launched that offering, we launched it on WeFunder. And so far, between WeFunder and also an offering round we did just before that, we're on track. We right now have raised enough funds to plant 1,064 acres. And which, by the way, is already more acres than we planted last year. So up to last year, including last year, we planted about 2,000 acres in total over about 100 different farms. And this year we've already funded just over 1,000 acres on our target of 3,000. Now, 590 of those acres are in action right now. I mean, literally right now, as we speak, trees are arriving with farmers in the US. The US has a very short planting season. It's mostly happens April and into May. So those trees are there with the farmers, they're receiving them. So that's happening right now. And then in Costa Rica, Guatemala and Mexico, we have not only contracts in place, we have waiting lists of farmers who want to participate in the planting this year, which is really, really cool and exciting for us to see the interest from the farmers. So if you're following the plot here, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, there's a gap, right? You want to plant 3,000 acres, but hold on a minute. So far, you've been funded for about 1,000 acres. So we've got a gap here of 2,000 acres. So I want to address the gap and the different scenarios. So even if we didn't raise another single dollar, we are good to go with our 1,000 acres. And one of the things that's really fabulous about our program is it really can expand with the interest. So the more interest we have from investors, the more funding we have come in, and each $3,000 is designed to fund 1 acre of trees. So on the one hand, at World Tree, you know, we're not sweating that 1,000 acres when we've got 2,000 acres more we want to do. But on the other hand, we really want to do another 2,000 acres, because 2,000 acres more makes so much more possible for our farmers, our economies, and the world. And really, that's where you come in. So we're actually extending our offering deadline to June the 30th, so that we're giving investors a longer time to come in and invest with us inside of this program. And if you're intrigued by this, you want to participate, the minimum investment is $3,000, which funds 1 acre of trees. And that investment will come to maturity in 8 to 12 years. And the reason there's a range there is some trees are like, you know, they're the front runners, they grow the fastest. And then others, you know, may lag behind. With a peak, we expect around 10 years. And most importantly, this is open to everyone, including non-accredited investors. So this is really, you know, if you're moved by what we're doing, this is what our call to action is, to help us fill that gap so we can plant as many of those 3,000 acres as we possibly can. And just so you know, right now, if you do invest, we still have a few units available at $2,500 is the minimum. So if you're interested in that, you can go online and find out more about how that works. Now, I want to come back to this, really what we created as the theme for this presentation, and the question that I left you with at the beginning, which is there such a thing as a good risk? And, you know, you're going to make your own investment decisions. And so that's one piece of it, your investment decisions. But then what else are we doing with our investment money? And one of my friends called David, he's invested a few times in World Tree, and he's a good friend, and he sat me down at his kitchen table one day, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "Kathy, I want you to know something important." He said, "I've invested in World Tree, and I'm really hoping I'm going to make a profit from my investment. But I want you to know that's not the main reason I've invested. I've invested in this because I know that I'm investing in something that's going to help the planet and create a future for us on this planet." And that's really what we're up to here. And we've been asking ourselves, you know, what at World Tree are we doing to make a difference and could contribute to our communities in this COVID age? And we've come to the conclusion that the best thing that we can do is to continue to participate in building a future for our farmers, and building a future for our communities, and building a future for our planet. And farmers are if anyone hasn't noticed this right now with everything that's going on, they're the heart and soul of our communities. They're the hard workers. And 56% of US farmers lost money last year. Farmers need to have new economics revenues. Farmers like Eugene, who said to me when I met him, there's only two things you can grow on my land, that's rocks and trees. And so he's delighted to have this opportunity. So our goal is to keep those livelihoods going for the farmers. We're also, by the way, drawing down massive amounts of carbon. These big leaves you're seeing are actually using a form of photosynthesis called C4. And it's the most efficient form of photosynthesis that exists. And it actually fuels that fast growth rate and brings down the same amount of carbon in 1 acre as the equivalent to your average American family of 4. And that's really quite extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
We're producing a sustainable source of timber for our future. We're also supporting our honeybees. So the flowers of the empress tree are what they call highly nectarious, which is a beautiful word that I dare you to try and slip into a sentence this afternoon. But basically what it means is it supports the pollinators. And hives around empress tree farm, you can expect that 1 acre of trees will support the bees in producing 100 jars of honey in 1 year, which again is also another economic revenue stream for our farmers. So our goal with our 3,000 acres, why we're going for the 3,000, it's going to allow us to support a brand new 150 farmers into our program. It's going to allow us to sequester up to 2.7 million tons of carbon and potentially produce over 2 million jars of honey, which is pretty darn delicious.
Phenomenal.
It's pretty delicious. So I want to complete this formal part of our presentation by, if this has inspired you, you can go and find out more about what we're doing, how the investment works. The investment process is like so easy, and hats off to WeFunder for making it so easy. And you can look up our offering, and if you're called to do so, invest directly online at this URL.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. I think we're going to open it now to Rita to see if we've got some questions going on.
We do. Thank you very much, Kathy. That was, as always, a fabulous and enlightening presentation. I get excited every time I hear the story over and over again. It's so great. Never get tired of it. We have quite a few questions that have come in, and I'll read the first one from Kevin. And he wants to know what the 1-year survival rate of the trees, and does the failure rate tend to decline significantly after 1 year?
Do you want me to answer that one? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yes, go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, really, really good question. So really the trees are most vulnerable in their first couple of years. So we've really got our eyes on survival. We've got our eyes on survival all the way through, but those first couple of years are very, very sensitive. Last year's survival for those trees by the end of the summer was at 82%. Mm-hmm. And so any trees that were lost in that season, we're actually in the replacement period now. So as part of our offering and the funding package, it actually includes enough funding to replace trees where necessary, up to 25%. And so we were in a process with farmers who lost trees or didn't have the survival we wanted to see. We're actually in a process of replacing those trees right now. And I'll just kind of answer a question you might have about that is, what causes issues with survival? And it can be multiple factors, from last year we had in some areas big rains that went late on, but in some areas terrible droughts. It might be something like deer come and eat the trees, or different factors. And so what we've done with the farmers who have lost trees is our farmer success team is on the phone with them really right from the beginning of the year, creating a plan for how they can be successful with the replacements that they've received. And then we create a plan, we all sign up on the plan, and then the replacements go out.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kevin. Great question.
Yes.
And Rebecca has a question about the investment. She says, my understanding is that if you're not a high income earner, you can only invest to a maximum of 10,000 in private investments per year. Does this investment fall under that category? Maybe that's a question for Angela.
Yeah, if Angela could, that'd be great.
Yes, that is correct, Rebecca. And you want to source our offering circular document and take it under advisement with your financial planner or advisor or accountant to really make sure that when you make an investment into any company, that you make sure that it's a fit for you inside of your best case financial portfolio.
Thank you. And Rachel has a couple of questions. She's asking if she invests in 8 acres at the rate of $2,500 per acre, what will be my return? Is there any way to quickly calculate that?
Yeah, in fact, it's a really great question, Rachel. While Kathy does the math on that, what didn't get shared right now, you can purchase an acre of Empress trees in the program for $2,500 an acre until we get our next 1,000 acres in the door to get planted. So there's an opportunity to invest at $2,500 instead of $3,000.
And to let you know, and I'll just add to that, Kathy had touched on it a bit, but it's the same return as if you had invested the 3,000. So if you take a look, on the WeFunder platform, or what Kathy had said, the per board foot, it doesn't matter if you get in on the 2,500, it's the same.
Yeah, Rachel, thank you for the question. So if you invested 8 acres right now for the 2,500, that would cost $20,000. Now, I want to underscore, triple underline, we don't know the future. So there's factors that are going to affect what you get. And those factors are going to be yield, there's going to be the price of the wood in the market. There's lots of factors. So we've made an assumption, like, what if we get a blend, we get like different prices for the wood, and you can read the offering for the details of the assumptions we've made. But based on those assumptions, if we were to get a 10% yield, so really bad, you get $38,000 back on your $20,000 investment. If we did our target, like what we're aiming for, according to the graph and the math, it would be $280,000, which is the awesome result, which would be awesome. And again, you're going to have to look for yourself if this is the kind of risk return scenario that works for you, given that we don't know the future.
And Rachel also wanted to know if the deadline is June 30th, 2020, is it still the 2019 offering that we're talking about?
Yes, Rachel, it is. We're still in the 2019 offering right now. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're kind of a year ahead of the game.
Kevin had a follow-up question about the trees, Kathy. What was the failure rate for the trees planted in the last couple of years?
So the year before that was, this is off the top of my head, about 70%. And then I can't remember for the year before that. But what I can tell you is that it's gone up every year.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is we just learned a lot of lessons about what works and how to improve. And it's also one of the reasons that our earliest investors got, you know, the best price for their investment, because every year we learn from our experiences from previous years.
Sure. And Ross has a question. If the trees are harvested between 10 and 12 years, how am I notified that my trees are being harvested? And am I given annual reports on the tree's progress?
That's really great. Does someone else want to answer that question?
Yeah, I'll do part of it. The trees are harvested between, actually it's between 8 and 12 years. So one of the things with the trees, Ross, is that when the canopy touches, that's Mother Nature signaling us, let us know that the trees are ready to be harvested. So if the trees are getting closer together, then we're going to harvest them at 8. Most of them, because of the spacing that we have, is going to be in 10 years. But after we cut out the biggest of the bunch, we'll call it, if there's a few that can exponentially grow even much bigger, we may leave it to the 12 years. And so each year, though, there's a series. So all the farmers that were, all the investors that invested, those trees are divided up between all of the investors for that year. So those are the trees that get harvested. And you will know when your trees are being harvested. Because say, for instance, for those who invested in 2018, it's 2028, or maybe a few of them in 2026 that get harvested. Did I answer that question, Rita, all of it?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think I want to add to that too, Ross, that we communicate with all of our investors twice a year. So you get to know who your farmers were when they planted, what the survival rate would look like. So we're going to be in communication with every investor through email correspondence and really just give you the what's happening with your trees and your investment through the 10 years we're going to be together.
And we definitely send you out information a couple of times a year, actually, how the trees are doing. We love sharing with you what's going on because we're so stoked about how well they're doing.
Yeah.
So Alan has an investment question for you, Angela. Hoping to invest $10,000 a year in this program. Already did the $10,000 for this year, but hoping this program continues for people like myself that cannot put $25,000 to $100,000 a year in.
You know, Ellen, thank you for that question. And our intention and our goal at World Tree is always to be able to provide the opportunity for every investor to participate in as low a price point to come into the program as possible. I mean, there are no guarantees what the future can look like or what will be made available around investments, but we'd like to see that happening every year, like we've been doing since 2015 when we created the EcoTree program. So I'm going to fight for that for you right through to the end.
Great. And Kevin has a question about, sorry, we got one above, I missed it. An anonymous attendee is asking, you mentioned the range of price for the lumber. What determines the price of the lumber I will receive? Sorry, what determines the price my lumber will receive?
Oh.
When did you want to do that one?
Actually, there are so many factors that go into the pricing of it because it's going to be the grade. If it's low, medium, or prime. So trees that have, say for instance, the trees have lots of nuts, that's going to have a lower value. Trees that are grown with very few knots, that's considered prime. That's why we work so closely with all the farmers to make sure that we have the best price possible that we're going to be able to get out of every log. And, you know, we compare it to so many different kinds of hardwoods, some softwoods, what the going market, what the rate is. And it's also going to be like if we were to contract some of our smaller contracts, Say, for instance, if we sold to a surfboard company, we'd probably get a higher price point for that because it's a specialty market. But if we have a large company that comes in and says, we'd like to buy the whole year, it still works out sort of like evenly. And I'll tell you right now, what you get, I get. So we're going to make sure that we get the best price annually for the lumber. Hope that answers that for you.
All right. And Kevin is wondering how the operations of the company are funded in advance of the first harvest. And when is the first harvest likely to occur?
I think that's a Kathy question.
I think it's a Kathy question.
Are we all on Big Zoom now?
Yes.
We're on Big Zoom. Hi, everyone. So the $3,000 that invest is to fund more than just the trees. So the trees are really, the trees and the shipping and the admin of the trees are really less than actually a quarter of what's involved. The rest is the management, the farmer support, the legal, the accounting, everything that it takes to manage those trees all the way through to the harvest. So in the offering document, it actually goes to the penny how the funds are spent and how they're allocated to manage the trees over the 10 years.
Rachel would like to know if there'll be a Canadian option that qualifies for an RSP or TFSA.
And
Rachel, I think when we first started our EcoTree program with the Canadian offering, and our Canadians who really forged the frontier for this for us, we just love our Canadian investors, and we made the RSP TFSA option an opportunity for them. And it was the cost to do that was really high for World Tree to manage having those tax deferred accounts for Canadians to invest in. And it even works the same way for Americans to do those tax deferred accounts as well. So right now we're not looking at opening a Canadian offering. However, investors from around the world can participate in this Reg A Plus offering. And over a quarter of our investors come from all over the world. World Tree is actually a global company where investors have come in from all over the world. So having the US offering available, exchange rates really makes that a possibility for all people to participate. Make it short, not at this time, Rachel, and who knows what the future will hold. Yeah. Hope that answers that okay for you.
Okay, we've got a few more questions. Galen is asking if selling carbon offsets will be a part of World Tree's business model in the future.
Want to answer that one, Rita?
yes, Rita.
As it happens, I am tasked with the accountability of creating that as part of our business model. And it's something we've thought about since the beginning, Wendy, of World Tree, that we wanted to do. We know our trees are superstars at absorbing carbon, and we know that there's a tremendous revenue potential for ourselves and our farmers to benefit from the sale of offsets. So we're now embarking on the process of our trees are getting big enough that we can get accurate measurements and projections of how much carbon they will absorb over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, which is the time frame for nature-based offsets. And we hope to be able to launch that program probably early next year, but stay tuned. Lots more to come on that one, and thanks for the question.
Excellent.
All right, so next question from Rebecca. I am assuming there will be a webinar replay. My partner wanted to log in but got slammed with work. Thanks.
Absolutely. So we have recorded this webinar, and you'll receive an email with a link to the recording. And I think we might even post it on the WeFunder site for those that missed it.
Yeah, we can do some edits for sure. And Mara wants to know if the offer is open to Texas residents yet.
Yeah, you know, it's great. World Tree has the opportunity to sell the Reg A Plus offering to lots of the states in the United States. There's a handful of states that we have to be a licensed issuer to sell the security, and Texas is one of them. Arizona was one. We just got permission from the Arizona Securities Commission to now sell in Arizona. We've applied for this great little document called the U4 application to sell securities in different states. And they've cashed their check in Texas, just so you know. So it's coming soon.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, there are some beautiful people on this call that I know of that's waiting to give us their investment money in Texas. So Texas, thank you. It's coming, I'm sure, and we'll let you know as soon as it happens. And yeah.
We're excited to offer that.
Yeah, really great.
So a couple more questions have come in over the chat as well. Do we have time, Kathy, for a couple more, do you think?
Yeah, there's just one. I think I see Steve Long had asked, and I'd really just like to address it real quick. Do you issue an annual K1?
Yes, we do.
Yes. And to make just a quick note about that, each tranche that gets completed, we have to wait until everybody sends us their, what's the word I'm looking for?
Tax ID number. Their
tax ID number before we can release them to everybody. So yes, we can, and yes, we do.
All right. Okay, so another question did come in from an anonymous attendee. Is it WorldTree's responsibility to secure the market for the lumber? Who pays for transporting the lumber from the plantation, for example, to markets around the world? Is the lumber destined for world markets or markets in the US? That's a few questions about lumber.
Yeah. So it's WorldTree is the one who's marketing the lumber. So we're the ones who will be responsible for creating the market out there and also for the ones selling it. And the transportation costs and all of that stuff, most often it is built inside of the contract. Whatever lumber that we're selling with, say, a big buyer, a lot of them say, you know, we want to look after this aspect of ourselves, but everything is going to be as is contracted. But we will make sure that, and yes, it's going to be a global market.
All right.
And we do have some chats, Rita, I agree.
I know, yeah. Roj was asking, what happens to my harvest after the first harvest? Or sorry, what happens to my investment after the first harvest?
For this particular investment, everything is complete at the end. When the last tree is harvested, it's the completion of the investment. And we give the trees 100% at that point to the farmer, so the farmer gets the full benefit of future harvests.
And he's also asking, is my risk with a particular farmer and location?
No, so just in case that wasn't clear, I love the question. So no, we don't take your money for, say, 1 acre and then just pop them all in, and that's your trees out in the field and you now own that tree. That's not how this works. You actually really are what you get is equity in a vintage. So all of the investors who come into this particular season, you become a pool of investors, and the trees are planted. If we do the full offering, there'll be at least 150 farmers in the program, and the trees for the vintage are spread across all of these different farms, and you receive the prorated profits as they come in from all of those different farms.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That's a common question people have.
Yeah.
The reason I love that question is because when we first had the idea for this program, it was the biggest pain point that we wanted to solve. We were like, we can't take in people's investment funds and just pop them in one place, knowing how much risk would be involved. So it was actually a key factor in creating this program.
We never wanted to call you and go, I hate to break it to you, we lost your acre. That was not going to be ever a call we would make to you.
Right.
Rita, I think we've got time for one more question.
Yeah, one more question from Kevin. Hi, Kevin. We haven't heard from you for a while. Kevin McCarty. Do you know any opportunities to invest in land with farmers to grow trees in a cooperative way with others?
Ooh.
Interesting.
That's
Yeah.
that's a good question. What I would say is call us. And our farmer team, they're talking to farmers all the time. So you never know that might be an opportunity there. So I would say the possibility could be real.
All right. Okay, I think that winds it up nicely. That was the last question we had outstanding. Thanks, everybody.
I want to thank you for, you know, taking time on your Friday afternoon and spending that time with us. If this has been a good experience for you, please share it with your friends. We'll be, you know, if you'd like this, we'll host more webinars. Share them with your friends. This recording will be available, I think, both on Facebook and on our WeFunder page. If you just want to support World Tree, and of course, money is one way, but another awesome way to support World Tree is to share what we're doing with your community and like our Facebook posts, and it all makes a huge difference to us to feel your support for what we're doing.
Yes. And also don't forget, everybody, this also supports Mother Earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.